So, when I was asked to speak today, I was stressed and worried as usual. But for a long time, there is this one thing that really fascinates me and impressed me. And it lingers on me all the time. And I wanted to study on it and grow into it because there are so much blessing on it. And that is the fear of God. I'm not worthy to speak on this topic because I'm far, far away from it. And even as we worship, I could just get the glimpse of how big and mighty is our God. He is above all dominions and powers as we worship. And it just makes me tremble. But as I say, I want to grow into it. Even though I'm so far away from it, just because I want to grow into it, I want to take this opportunity and I chose to speak on this topic, the fear of God and its blessings. One of the first memory verses that I learned as a child is Proverbs chapter 1 verse 7, which most of us are familiar. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. And I knew it for the longest time without really understanding it or knowing it. Whenever I read Bible and come across the fear of God, there are many blessings attached to it. So what really attracts me is the blessings that are attached to the fear of God. And so we just want to look at some of these passages. Proverbs chapter 9 verse 10 says, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and knowledge of the Holy One is understanding." So what is the result of the fear of God? It is wisdom. Proverbs 22 verse 4 says, "By humility and the fear of the Lord are riches and honor and life." What do we want in life? All that we want and all that we need in life are given here. You fear the Lord and you get them all. Psalms 34 verse 9 says, "Fear the Lord, you his holy people, for those who fear him lack nothing." It is explanatory itself. Psalms 128 verses 1 and 2 says, "Blessed are all who fear the Lord, who walk in obedience to him. You will eat the fruit of your labor. Blessings and prosperity will be yours." You know, in the next slides, this Psalms 128 is my favorite passage on Father's Day. Every Father's Day, I would love to take this because you just want the first verse, which is the condition, fear the Lord, walk in obedience, and follows the blessings. There are 6 verses in this Psalms 128. And all the 5 verses are the blessings that follow those who fear the Lord and walk in obedience. I just love this. Psalms 25 verse 14 says, "The secret of the Lord is with those who fear him, and he will show them his covenant." In other version, it says, "The Lord confides in those who fear him." Yeah. Who would not like God to reveal his secret to us? And the Lord reveals his secret only to those who fear him. And so today we want to look at 4 things. What is the fear of God? The source of the fear of God, how to cultivate the fear of God, and blessings that comes to those who fear God. And so let's look at what is the fear of God. Psalms 86 verse 11 says, "Teach me your way, Lord, that I may rely on your faithfulness. Give me an undivided heart that I may fear your name." Give me an undivided heart that I may fear your name. So what is the fear of God? The psalmist, according to the psalmist, an undivided heart leads to the fear of God. The fear of God means giving God our undivided attention. There are many things that are so attractive and that look so beneficial and profitable for us. It may be about upgrading ourselves with more and more knowledge, or updating ourselves with the latest trends or fashions or gadgets or mobile phones. Nowadays, we are possessed by mobile phones. Instead of we possessing the mobile phones have possessed us, young or old, even the toddlers. Anyway, we have given places to many unnecessary things to reign in us instead of exalting God in our life. I want to tell one story. A long time ago, in a place called Hungary, that's a country, there was a king. And this king found himself quite unhappy and depressed. And so he sent for his brother, who was a good-natured but indifferent person. The king said to him, "I am a great sinner. I fear to meet God." And this brother just laughed at it and went away. So this did not help the king at all, because at that point of time, he was really in need and in help, because he gotten to know the glimpse of the kind of life that he was living lately. So he really needed help. And so in those days, it was customary, if an executioner sounded a trumpet before a man's door, it was a signal to them that the man is going to be taken for execution. And so the king sent the executioner to his brother's door, okay, in the death of night, to sound the fateful blast. Now quickly, his brother dressed up and stepped to the door, and the executioner came and seized him and took him in the presence of the king to his brother. And this brother knelt, fell on his knees before his brother and said, "What have I done to offend you?" And in the next slide, I have written it. The king answered, "My brother, if the sight of a human executioner is so terrible to you, shall not I, having grievously offended God, fear to be brought before the judgment seat of Christ?" And so to fear God is costly, but not to fear God is even more costly. Many of us sin against God without realizing the judgment of God. We know that God is love, but God is also a just judge. So we must think consequentially. King David committed adultery. Although God forgave him, he had to pay a heavy price for the sin that he has committed. But God calls him, the same person, a man after his own heart. But just that one moment, he lost the fear of God. David lost the fear of God. Just that one moment, he did not have the fear of God, and that led to committing adultery. And so the fear of God is to please him. Imagine the relationship between a child and his parents. The child knows that his parents love him very much, and so he does not want to do anything that would displease his parents, that will disappoint his parents, because he wants to make them happy. He wants to do well in school, not because he's afraid that his parents will beat him up if he doesn't do well in school, but because he knows that his parents have put their best effort on him. He knows that his parents cared for him, loved him, and does do everything what they can for him. And so he wants to bring honor for his parents. He wants to make them happy. He wants to make them proud by his performance in school. And so the child wants to please his father and mother just because they love him very much. And that is the same thing. The fear of God is to please God. The fear of God is to honor him, to exalt him, because we know that God has done so much for us and we do not want to disappoint him. We want to please him in all that we do. And that is the fear of God. Now we want to look at the second point, that is the source of the fear of God. Where does the source of the fear of God comes from? Proverbs 1 verse 7 says, remember the verse that I learned first when I was a child? The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. The beginning, it says, unless we fear the Lord, we do not have the knowledge. Of course, this is not talking about the knowledge of science and technology or politics, but it's talking about the truth of who God really is and who we really are. The Bible teaches us in Psalms 14 verse 1, it is the fool that says in his heart, there is no God. If people do believe that there are some sorts of God, that is not the God that is revealed in the scripture. This knowledge comes from not fearing God. This is the knowledge that comes from not fearing God. For believers like us who are sitting here, we can clearly remember how we used to live our life before we met Jesus, how we lived our life, how we were before we encountered God. And so living in and loving the sin in our life is not fearing God. I want to read from Jeremiah chapter 32, verses 38 to 14. And they shall be my people, and I will be their God. I will give them one heart and one way, that they may fear me forever, for their own good and the good of the children after them. I will make with them an everlasting covenant, that I will not turn away from doing good to them, and I will put the fear of me in their hearts, that they may not turn from me. This is a promise made by God, that he will save people for himself, and he will put the fear of him in the hearts of people through a new covenant. And this new covenant is fulfilled in Jesus when he died for us on the cross. And so no one fears God unless he come to put his trust in the finished work of Jesus on the cross. When this takes place in our life, our eyes are open and we come to realize and we come to know who God really is. So we know that without a new heart, without knowing and trusting in the finished work of Jesus, we cannot fear God. A new heart and that revelation is required to fear God. And so the fear of God is a treasure for those who have realized it. The fear of God is a treasure who have realized it. I want to read from Isaiah 33 verse 6. It says, he will be the sure foundation for your times, a rich store of salvation and wisdom and knowledge. The fear of the Lord is the key to this treasure. We begin to see the true attributes of God, that he is immensely powerful and mighty, yet he is loving and faithful, that he has knowledge of every details of our life, and that he knows our heart more thoroughly than any one of us. He knows us when we sit down and when we rise up. He perceives our thoughts. There is nowhere we cannot go where he cannot see us. His presence is everywhere. He has fearfully and wonderfully made us. He knew us before we were even formed in our mother's womb. He put his image on us. He has a plan for every one of us. Past, present, future, all the journey of our life are written on the palm of his hand. He's working out his best plan to the perfection for us. And we realize that we have sinned against God. We have turned against God in spite of this great plan that God has for us. But God, in his grace and mercy, he made a way for us to be restored back to the Father through his Son, Jesus. Realizing this is the beginning of knowledge that produces the fear of God. And this is our treasure. This is our treasure. I want to go to the third point that is about cultivating the fear of God. How do we cultivate the fear of God? There are many ways and means in which we can cultivate the fear of God. Thousands of ways and means may be there. Even sitting here together and listening together and learning together. This is one way of growing in the fear of God. Being in the company of godly people, having godly mentors in life, or being part of an accountable group like your cell group or prayer group. These are all ways and means of cultivating a godly, cultivating the fear of God. But I want to mention one basic thing which we all know, and that is by being in the presence of God. Psalms 34 verse 11 says, Come, my children, listen to me. I will teach you the fear of the Lord. And God says, come to me. I will teach you the fear of God. Only God can teach us the fear of God. The fear of God can be cultivated only in the presence of God. Busy lifestyles, work lives, family commitments, and everybody has personal goals. We have our hobbies and social media. This can all come in the way of maintaining a spiritual discipline, but neglecting a personal time with God. Neglecting a personal time with God can be very disastrous. It can slowly lead to that one moment without the fear of God, as we see in the story of King David. And so it is paramount for us to fit ourselves with the word of God every day. And so let's give our utmost importance to our personal time with God. I'm not talking this just to you. I'm talking this to myself also. Spending personal time with God. And church, let's also make the best use of all the corporate prayer meetings that are going on. What we are doing as a family, as a church, this can help us and keep us encouraged and help us to walk in the fear of God. One of us may be very discouraged or maybe going through a rough time. Another person may be at the crossroad, not knowing what to do. The prayer that one person prayed in the group can be a directives for the person who is at the crossroad, who is confused. The prayer that another person prayed may be an encouragement for the one who is going through discouragement. So it is good to be part of such fellowship. This will help us walk in the fear of God and help us cultivate the fear of God. And the fourth point that I want to say, and this is my favorite part today, okay, blessings that comes to those who fear the Lord. And today I want to take us to the story of two women who were midwives who during the reign of Pharaoh in Egypt. And this is found in the book of Exodus. Exodus chapter 1 verses 15 to 20. It's a bit long, but I want to read it because this is a story and we will get to know from here. So I'll read it out. The king of Egypt said to the Hebrew midwives, whose names were Shiphrah and Puah, when you are helping the Hebrew woman during childbirth on the delivery stool, if you see that the baby is a boy, kill him. But if it is a girl, let her live. The midwives, however, feared God and did not do what the king of Egypt had told them to do. They let the boys live. Then the king of Egypt summoned the midwives and asked them, why have you done this? Why have you let the boys live? The midwives answered Pharaoh, Hebrew women are not like the Egyptian women. They are vigorous and give birth before the midwives arrive. So God was kind to the midwives, and the people increased and became even more numerous. And because the midwives feared God, he gave them families of their own. So Shiphrah and Puah lived during the time of oppression of Israelites. And this is the order of the king to kill the sons at birth. Yeah. But because these women feared God, they let the male live. And what happened? Because the Egyptians were afraid. The Israelites were increasing in number. They are increasing, they are prospering, and they became insecure. They felt threatened, and such insecurity caused this command to be given, right? But the response of the Hebrew women, there is so much to learn from them about the fear of God and the blessings that come. So I want to draw 4 blessings from this story about the fear of how the fear of God can bring blessings. Number 1 is they are part of the story of God's deliverance for the Hebrews. They are part of the story of God's deliverance for the Hebrews. So God was kind. In verse 20, it says, was kind to the midwives, and people increased and became even more numerous. The Egyptians were afraid because the Hebrews are increasing in number, but because of the fear of God by these two women, the number continued to increase and became even more numerous. And so this is part of the story of the deliverance of Hebrews. And because these two women feared God and defied the king's order to kill the Hebrews, God honored them. And how did God honor them? By repeatedly telling the story of these two women, just like we are talking today. From generations to generations, these two women are honored, they are remembered, and so God honored them. There is no greater legacy than to leave behind the fear of God for the generations to come. And so they are part of the story of God deliverance for the Hebrew. Now, blessing number two, the fear of God will keep us away from evil practices. Boaz and Shipra were able to withstand the evil practice because they feared God. We also remember the story of Joseph, how he was enticed by Potiphar's wife. Yeah, in Genesis chapter 39, verse 9 to 10, it says, he said, "No one is greater in this house than I am. My master has withheld nothing from me except you, because you are his wife. How then could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God?" And though she spoke to Joseph day after day, he refused to go to bed with her or even be with her. He refused to be even with her. And that's so wise, I would say. That's the wisdom of God. The strength and the principle of Joseph come from the fear of God. Today we see many men and women and that also great men and women of God fallen. And so it is easy to say we love God, but only the fear of God will protect us and keep us away from evil. If we lose that one moment of the fear of God, it can rob us of all the blessings and joy and peace that God has in store for us. And so fearing God will keep us away from evil practice. And the third blessing that I want to draw to us is the fear of God leads to life in abundance. Exodus 1 verse 21 says, "And because the midwives feared God, he gave them families of their own." It is specifically mentioned here that God gave them families of their own. I don't know whether they were waiting to have families, but it is mentioned God blessed them with their own families. And so the fear of God leads to abundant life. Psalms 34 verse 9 to 10 also says, "The fear the Lord, you his holy people, for those who fear him lack nothing. The lions may grow weak and hungry, but those who seek the Lord lack no good things." So in life, everyone faces problems, everyone faces challenges, but as it says, the lion, the powerful man and wealthy people may even have their own problems and difficulties, but only those who fears the Lord will lack nothing. They will not lack anything, and no good thing, it is mentioned. And the fourth blessings that I want to draw is the fear of God produces wisdom. It is the wisdom that the midwives, the wisdom of God, that the midwives were able to deceive the king and escape the punishment of the king. You know, they are nurses. In our present context, these midwives may be the nurses, but they feared God. And when the king confronted them, what was their answer? They said, "Hebrew women are not like Egyptian women. They are vigorous and give birth before the midwives arrive." And so I believe this is truly the wisdom of God. As Proverbs chapter 9 verse 10 says, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom." I want to tell you, we have had sisters living with us many times, and all these sisters, they are not properly educated. So there are some kind of insecurity, but I always tell them that even though you are not educated and qualified like others, you can still live a respectable respectable and honorable life if you build a relationship with God. Your parents will call you up when they are in confusion, when they need guidance. They can call you up and take your counsel. And where does your wisdom come from? It comes from the relationship that you have with God. And today, 3 of them have got married, and they are with their families. They have children. And some of you, most of you, I think, know a thing who was living with us 2-3 years ago. And she is living in Goa. She is a beautician. So she may not be earning much, but I'm just so glad to know that she is progressing in life. The last time we heard is she's trying to learn driving, not riding a scooty. So she's trying to apply for the license so that she can go to her work in the scooty. And so I believe that this is the wisdom of God. Even though we are not qualified or learned or educated, the wisdom of God comes from spending time with God. And so in my conclusion, I want us to remember that there are many, many blessings that comes from for those who fear God. The fear of God brings honor, and the fear of God keeps us away from evil. It leads us to abundant life, and it produces wisdom. The fear of God can be cultivated by being in the presence of God, by spending personal time with God. We cannot fear God unless we put our trust in the finished work of Jesus on the cross. The fear of God is a treasure for those who have realized this. The fear of God is pleasing God. It is honoring God. It is exalting God, because we do not want to disappoint and we do not want to displease the one who have loved us so much, who have given us everything, who has redeemed us eternally. And so thank you for listening to me.